Whether you're picking and grinning or just grinning, grab a drink, pull up a seat. It's time for Roots Music Rambler. Turn it up. So one of the challenges of doing this podcast is thinking of different things to talk about here on the front end of it. We just recorded, for those of you out there listening, we just recorded like 3 episodes in the last week. Yeah. So we've exhausted interesting things to talk about for the time being. But
we need some more lived experience.
we probably do. But I've seen some interesting memes going around on the social medias.
Oh boy.
Of, they'll have a grid of, 12 artists, and they'll say you can only listen to 5 the rest of your life. Right. Which is an interesting, kind of exercise to go, oh, okay, well, which 5 would I pick out? Right. And I don't actually participate by punching anything into the computer, but I'll look and go, 1, 2, 3. I got 5 there. So I would like to pose the question to you, Francesca.
Oh my God.
If you could only listen to 5 artists for the rest of your life, who would they be? 5 of them.
If y'all could see my face.
Yes, he's like, oh, shit. 5. Let's do top 5. Give me your top 5.
Shit. Okay. Well, Sunvolt.
Yeah, Sunvolt. Okay.
I mean, that's a given. Does that even count? I mean,
it counts.
Okay. Yeah, Sunvolt. I mean, Drive By Truckers.
Yeah.
Oh shit. Can I look at my Spotify real quick?
Yeah, you can look at while you're looking it up. I got 2 out of you. I'll give you my 5 because I think I can name mine pretty quickly.
Just so everybody knows, like, we did not prep this, right?
No.
So like I'm totally on the spot here.
Yeah, I put her on the spot, which I like doing because I like seeing the facial expressions. Anyway, So all right, so I'll give you my 5 while you're looking up your other 3.
All right.
So my 5 are Joy Loudacune. That's no one should be surprised by that. Marcus King, Chris Stapleton, Tyler Childers, Sturgill Simpson. Those are my 5.
Okay. All right.
And that's saying something because I am a huge Van Halen fan. I love Van Halen.
Yeah.
So if you go outside of the, Americana country music genres, there's a lot of other bands that I might consider for that list. But if those are the 5, if I could only listen to 5, that would be it. Tyler, Sturgill, Chris, Marcus, Joy.
Okay.
And I'm I don't really hesitate on that. Those are the 5 I listen to the most. Those are the 5 I look forward to seeing and or new albums the most. So I'm pretty confident that that's a pretty good pick for me.
And you came up with that very quickly.
I did. I kind of ponder these things a lot. Now, I will say it does hurt my heart just a little bit that Jason Isbell on that list, because he would probably be 6 if I could go 6, because I really like his songwriting. But I'm pretty happy with my 5.
Okay, so then I've got Sunvolt, Drive By Truckers. Here, I got you. I'll throw in Jason Isbell.
Okay.
And like we talked about recently, not so much the newer stuff, but like going back to Southeastern and even the albums with 400 Unit, like I still go back and listen to those. Those are the albums and the songs that speak to me. So, okay, so that's 3?
That's 3.
Okay. Oh, Tyler Childers, Durr.
There you go. 4.
Oh, sweet baby Jesus.
I don't think he recorded any albums.
No, he didn't. No, I don't think he had a record deal. Oh, I got to go with Mumford and Sons. I know we haven't really talked about them. Yeah. So there was I can tell you exactly, like 2010, 2011, I was going through some stuff like internally.
Yeah.
The album Sigh No More was really big, and like if it were a cassette tape, it would have just snapped.
Gotcha.
Because I listened to it over and over and over and over and over again. Marcus Mumford, like his voice is distinct. And, a lot of people say maybe it's not that great. I don't really care, but it just does something to me. Like he could read me the phone book.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. And again, early, like the first 3 Mumford and Sons, like their full length studio albums, I didn't care for a couple of their later ones, but I know they have a new one coming out that is supposedly going back to their earlier releases.
Yep.
So I'm excited for that. But yeah, like if I want to feel really nostalgic and like beat myself up a little bit, I'll put that on. I'll listen to some old Mumford
That's
and
fair.
yeah. So yeah, that would have to be it.
It sounds like your Mumford and Sons is a lot like my Chris Stapleton, because Traveler came out right at the time that I separated from my wife and was going through a divorce.
Yeah.
And the Traveler, and then the double album after that from him, like his music just pulled me out of that. Like he saved me. It was really, really, because I would come home at night and just listen to his stuff. And there were, a lot of lost love drinking songs, good old fashioned country music on that I was feeling at the time, and he was singing it. And then there were also some uplifting songs that kind of came out of that era with, Millionaire and Friendship and whatnot. And so it put me back on the right track. So that therapy and meditation pulled me out of the pits. Yeah. So sounds like that's the correlation there, which is good. So it's good to know. We haven't really talked about Mumford & Sons.
No, we haven't. And now, can I choose them for a pick in the Grinnin?
Sure, you can. We can do that.
All right.
We can do that. We'll get to that in a little bit later. So if you want to do it this episode, you can, or if not, they do have a new album coming out. I've heard a couple songs off of it. Sounds like their old stuff. So yeah, I think we'll all enjoy. Mumford & Sons is one of those bands, you either love them or you hate them. And I think the people who love them are going to love this new album. The people who hate them are just going to hate them because they're assholes or whatever. So
yeah,
that's fine.
I would agree with that.
Welcome to Roots Music Rambler. She's Frank.
And he's Falls.
And we're rambling on through the stories behind the music we love.
Today on the show, we've got a newcomer whose first album is out and shows her impressive talent as a singer-songwriter. And her name is Cait Justice. And Jason, where is she from?
She's from Pikeville, Kentucky. She's from Pike, Vegas.
Shit. Oh, yeah. Boy.
So my hometown, it's also the hometown of where Dwight Yoakam was born. Patty Loveless is from there. Britt Taylor, who we've had on the show, is from there. So lots of musical talent comes out of that there egg right there in the middle of Eastern Kentucky. So super excited to have her on the show.
Yes. And it's quite excellent for you to make that connection. And I have questions, but let's get the formality out of the way first. Okay. So Cait's first album is called Angel Teeth, and it dropped a few weeks ago. So as we're recording, by the time this episode airs, it'll be like another month added onto that. And it is a beautiful set of songs that tell stories of her home in the Appalachian foothills. Essentially, it's her and her guitar with some fine backing musicians on a few of the tracks. And we both think that Cait may just be the new voice of Appalachian folk music. So that being said, Jason, Pikeville isn't a very huge place. So did you know Cait before recent memory?
I actually didn't, but keep in mind, I left Pikeville 35 years ago. So long before she was born.
Right.
And her parents, when we met, and I think we touch on this when we talked to her, when we met, we did the check that everybody in Eastern Kentucky does, where you say, okay, who's your kin? And you ask that question so you can say, okay, do I know anyone in your family? She gave me the names of her parents and I think her grandmother. And I did some stalking online and looked people up. And I think her parents are even probably a good decade younger than me. So I didn't cross paths really with anybody in her family. I met her at the Monarch, which we talk about a lot here on this show. Mark Roberts at the Monarch said, I want to introduce you to Cait. She's from Eastern Kentucky. And I turned to Cait and said, okay, you're going to have to tell me where in Eastern Kentucky. And she was like, oh, you've never heard of it. I'm from Pike County. And I was like, you're going to have to tell me where in Pike County because I'm from Pikeville. So bring it. And so we made a nice little connection there. But all I knew at the time was she was like a college student who was a singer-songwriter, and she was hanging out at the Monarch. I didn't know anything more about her, and we didn't really get a chance to talk very deeply. So a couple of weeks ago, I'm at the Monarch watching Logan Ledger and Mason Vaya. They played, and they were fantastic. And Gil Holland comes in. So if you don't know who Gil Holland is, that's okay. He's a businessman in Louisville. He happens to own Sonoblast Records, which signed and released Cait's new album. And kind of the circle connected back to me meeting her. And I just said to Gil, we got to get her on the show. So here we are.
Yes, and you two have your back home catching up out of the way, right? So we're not gonna have to listen to you guys, like, list all your cousins and the rest of your kin, are we?
No. That's more of like what my mom would do. My mom would roll off the names of 37 people no one knows or cares about on a podcast. Cait and I have gotten that out of our system. So.
All right, good. So we should have your mom on the show at some point.
Maybe. I mean, she's at least entertaining.
Well, get her on the show. I think it'll be a hoot. Oh, it would be even crazier if we got my mom on the show.
Yeah, there we go. Let's get both moms on, and we'll just have them talk to each other, and we'll sit here and watch.
And I'm gonna sit here with my popcorn, aka hazy IPA, and take it all in. Oh my goodness!
I will say that it would be kind of funny to see if my mom does her Italian thing with your mom. So my former in-laws are my former mother-in-law is like second generation off the boat, Italian American, right? My mother, anytime she's around someone or talking to someone about Italian food, which if you're going to talk about anything with Italians, don't act like you know anything about Italian food, because that's just you don't. But my mother, and this always irritated me, but it's kind of funny, but it's also kind of weird. She would be sitting at a table full of Italian people, and she would say, "Real Italians eat their spaghetti with a spoon." And she would scoop up the spaghetti and twirl the fork in the spoon. And I would always just bury my head in my hands like, "Mom, goodness. These are real Italians. What are you doing?"
Did those real Italians, were they using a spoon with their spaghetti?
No.
No. See, that's another thing. Okay, I think we all know my family, we're very Italian, right? We never did that. We never used a spoon to twirl the spaghetti. That was something that I saw people doing like in restaurants. And I'm like, oh, all right. But then again, we didn't really eat spaghetti a whole lot. The rigatoni was the king in our house. So
I think the spoon thing is a regional thing.
And that very well could be too.
Yeah. It happens with some Italians, but not all Italians. But my mother had a couple of Italian immigrant families that, like, she grew up with their kids going to school in the 50s and 60s in a little town called Logan, West Virginia. And the Chiricos, which now there's several Chiricos Italian restaurants in Eastern Kentucky, Southern West Virginia. And my mom knew the Chiricos really, really well. And so that's where she picked it up. I don't know if they're from Calabria or Sicily, or I have no idea where they're from. But I think it's a regional thing. And for whatever reason, my mother has always decided to dance out that little nugget when she's around someone of Italian descent. And it just makes me go, stop talking.
We should make this happen. I think it would be hysterical.
It'll probably be a lot funnier, but just as intriguing as having our daughters on the show talking to each other.
Oh, true.
Yeah. So that'd be fun.
Especially if your mom is as hard of hearing as my mother is. Because then the whole time they'll be like, what?
What? Yeah.
What did you say? I didn't hear you.
Well, my mother will have she has a tendency she's very inquisitive, and she'll, ask questions, but she also has a tendency to dominate the conversation. She will start telling a story, and the story will just go on, and you're like, whoa. Whoa, didn't sign up for this, but that's okay.
Yes.
Don't get me wrong.
Familiar.
I love my mom. My mother is delightful. She's entertaining as hell. I had her on my old marketing podcast once upon a time, which was also at the time a video show, because my mother is a communications professional. She's got some great case studies. She has done some amazing work in her career. She's retired now, but I had her on the show to talk about the specific thing she did. So this is a video podcast, right? She shows up on her little webcam at the house with noise canceling, like big megaphone, like going hunting earphones on, shades, dark glasses, sunglasses, smoking a cigarette on my show. And I was like, wow. Wow.
Do you have any stills from that? Like any screenshots?
I'm sure I could pull one up. I'm sure the video exists out there somewhere. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. It's really interesting to see. I mean, she's brilliant, but she was just like, she does not care what you think of her. So she just goes. So That's my mom's.
All right.
Well, out of curiosity, did your mother have any sort of musical impact or input on you?
A little bit. She and my dad had I shouldn't say they had a lot of the same musical interests, but then where they started branching out, it was vastly different.
Mm.
Okay. My dad loved the Doors and Steppenwolf. My mother hated it. She said it's hippie stoner music. My mom was all about Motown. There was always music growing up, and we listened to the oldies.
Yeah.
And the oldies, to me, someone my age, is like music from the 50s, the 1950s and 1960s, for all you youngins out there. So, yeah, and my mom and I to this day will be in the car together, and I'll put like the 50s station on Sirius XM.
Mm-hmm.
I sing along with all the songs, and she, without fail, makes the same comment. She's like, I can't believe that my kids know all the words to the songs that I grew up listening to, and I'm like, well, it's because we heard it so much and we liked it, So in that way, yeah. So, and because of that, like newer artists, I have tried to introduce to my mother thinking she would appreciate them, like specifically Leon Bridges. One of his I don't even remember what number album it was, but the one with Better Man on it. I'm like, Mom, you got to hear this. I'm like, just listen to it and then tell me what you think. And she's like, oh, it's really good. I'm like, if I told you that he is a 22-year-old kid singing like this and singing these songs, would you believe it? And she said no.
Yeah.
So I try to think of it as like a bridge, so I can kind of introduce some newer stuff to her. John Baptiste, I had her listening to that when we were driving back from New Orleans. I'm like, Mom, this guy's great, So that's it. Motown, typically.
I bet she'll like Cam Clark. You should fire up some Cam Clark for her.
Clark, okay.
He's a Kentucky boy. His album just dropped a couple of weeks ago. And the first time I saw him, I was like, I don't know what's going to come out of this kid because he's young. He might weigh 110 pounds. He's a little tiny guy. But he had a beard, too. So I was like, okay, that's weird. It's an interesting looking cat. He's a smaller guy. I mean, I'm a big guy, so everybody's small to me. But anyway, and he's got this really beautiful guitar, and he gets up and he starts singing. And if I had my eyes closed, I could have sworn I was listening to an 80-year-old black blues singer from Mississippi. I was like, holy shit. What is coming out of this kid's mouth?
White?
No, he's white.
Oh, shit.
He's a little white kid from Paris, Kentucky, but his music is amazing. Good R&B, soul, a little bit of blues, a little bit of rock. He's really, really talented, really good. I had him as a Pickin the Grinnin on the show several, like probably a year ago.
Yeah, I don't remember. Okay.
He opened up for Leon Meitzen when I saw Leon Meitzen at the Monarch. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So Cam Clark. So.
The other thing about my mom and my dad too, it's coming full circle here, tying in the whole Italian heritage thing, is I also heard a lot growing up, like the Neapolitan folk songs.
Yeah.
That's the part of Italy my mom's family is from.
Nice.
Listening to all of that, we still listen to it now and sing along, and it's kind of nice.
Very good. Well, my mother, the biggest musical impact she had on me was her record collection was what I entertained myself with after school. And it wasn't just like because my stepdad had a bunch of records too, but more specifically, my mother's record collection, I think, gave me a lot more diversity because my dad was kind of into either Southern rock or some variation of rock and roll. A little bit of country, but mostly rock. But with Mom, like I grew up on Linda Ronstadt and the Eagles and a lot of artists that a typical young male person growing up in Eastern Kentucky probably wouldn't have heard. My mother's got some really interesting stories too, so it might be good having her on the show because she was the person who she was president of the Student Center Board at the University of Kentucky when she was a student, and that was the board that brought in the artists to do concerts. And my mother would have the artists over to her apartment and feed them. Ironically enough, spaghetti is what she would make them.
Can I say Italian food?
And I know that like she had on at least one occasion, Shauna and I hung out at her apartment. She was tight at one point with Kenny Rogers in the first edition. Like this is like late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mom's probably got some stories worth telling on this show. So we'll see.
And as we're talking, I just thought of something, and we could have this conversation at another time since we're running kind of long here, but family road trip soundtracks, right?
Yeah.
Like we grew up in a time when like Spotify didn't exist. There weren't playlists. What's a playlist, right?
Yeah.
We made mixtapes. We took so many road trips because I know I mentioned before, my younger brother played travel hockey. So we were always in the car, always on the road. And my parents had like a case, this plastic case, just all full of cassette tapes. And the variety, that alone could be the topic of of an episode,
Sure.
right? I'll just leave it at that. We'll save that and discuss further another time.
Okay. We thought we would run out of topics for this part of the segment show, and now
I know, now we can't
invented
stop.
5 more. So that's how this stuff works.
We just got to write them down because I'll forget.
It is definitely time for a refill. So we're going to take a quick break, take a moment, if you will, and listen to more about the awesome sponsors that make the show happen. When we come back, my newest homegirl joins the show. Singer-songwriter Cait Justice is up next. Don't go away. This is Roots Music Rambler.
Get ready for Netflix's gripping new medical drama, Pulse. Set in a cutting-edge Miami trauma center, third-year resident Dr. Danny Sims is unexpectedly thrust into a promotion when beloved chief resident Dr. Xander Phillips gets suspended. Then, with the emotional and physical stakes at their highest, a storm will push the hospital and its residents to their limits. Witness how life can change in a heartbeat when you're operating under pressure. Watch Pulse, only on Netflix.
Church-class girl raised on the county line, could never find the time to think about anything other than getting by. I got my first guitar at 14, and I ain't put it down a day since then. I dream of the ones that came before me, and the songs scratched in the walls no one will ever hear again but me. So just sit here with me on this mud creek morning. Looks like the sun's still rising after all. Let's at least finish this glass. We'll reminisce about the times we had, tightrope walking on the Pike Floyd County line.
Welcome back to Roots Music Rambler. That is Mud Creek Morning from the debut album for Cait Justice, Appalachian folk singer and songwriter. It is her first album, and it's on Sonoblast record from my old buddy Gil Holland. Cait, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you all doing?
I'm doing great, doing great. We're gonna have a fun conversation tonight, and I promise not to hoard all the questions so that Francesca can ask some too. But for reasons that will be revealed, Cait and I are going to have a good couple of conversation points here. So I mentioned Gil Holland, who is the owner of Sonoblast Records. I ran into him at the Monarch Music Community, where I met you originally. And we talk about the Monarch here a lot on the show because we love it. And it's just cool to go and see and listen to some good artists here in Louisville. I'm curious how you met Gil and how this record deal came about, because when I met you, I don't think you had cut the record yet, and you were a singer-songwriter that I was introduced to, but you were young and you just moved to Louisville not long ago. And so how did it all come about? How'd you meet Gil and how'd that happen?
So I actually also met Gil at the Monarch. All the best things happen there. I swear they do. So I met Gil at the Monarch one night. I don't even remember what show it was, but Mark introduced us. And I remember what time it was. I think it was around October because I had midterms like for college. And so I come into this show and I walk in and Mark's like, "Hey, there's somebody I want you to meet." He introduces me to Gil, and I talked to him for a second, and he's like, yeah, like, Mark was telling me about you. I think your stuff's pretty cool. Like, here's my business card. You should reach out. And I remember this was during midterms because I straight up just didn't respond to Gil for like a whole week. Just completely like I like got his business card and I was like, I'm going to send you an email, and then midterms. And so like a week goes by, I completely forget about it. And I get a call from Mark, and he's like, hey man, Gil said that Gil's trying to get a hold of you. Like, did you not say anything? And like, I mean, it just felt like my stomach dropped, and I was like, I completely forgot to do that. And so I sent him an email at like 11 o'clock on a Saturday, and I was like, man, I'm so sorry. Here's some of my music. Let me know what you think. And he emailed me back like within a couple hours. He was like, let's get coffee on Monday. I was like, okay, cool. Yeah. And so we go and meet at this coffee shop. He tells me like Sonoblast is interested in helping you do a record. I've been doing music since I was a kid. I was singing before I could talk, but I didn't really start doing songwriting until about a year prior to that. So I was completely new to everything when it came to that. So to hear that from him was I mean, it was incredible. It was a dream come true. A couple days later, we met up again. I signed the contract. And then a week after that, I was in the studio. It was a whirlwind. I mean, within the span of like 2 weeks, I was in college. Like, I was doing my midterms. I was stressed out, had no idea who Gil was, had never met him before in my life. And then 2 weeks later, I'm at La La Land recording these songs.
Wow.
And it just went by so fast. And so, yeah, I did the whole record about 2 weeks after the first time I met him. And it just came out last Wednesday. So it's been pretty quick, I would say.
So will we. Yes, that is a whirlwind.
Wild ride for sure.
Wow. So you said, okay, the whirlwind that you just described, like a week after signing or 2 weeks after meeting Gil, you're in the studio. So did you have like a whole cache of songs written, ready to go? What were the recording sessions like, and how long did it take?
Yeah, so I mean, I had been writing for about a year at that point. I'd been playing shows. I'd been, going to open mic, songwriter nights, and I had about 15 that I was like playing pretty consistently for shows. And so when he brought up, he was like, we could probably do like 8 to 10. And I was like, well, here's all 15. Let's just, this is everything that to my name that I've written so far. Let's pick some out. And so the ones on the album are the ones that I feel like are, the strongest. And that one of the songs, Mud Creek Morning, is actually the first song I really ever sat down and wrote. Love Song I wrote when I was 19. I didn't start taking songwriting seriously until I was about 21, 22. So it's like, I consider both of those my first songs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But Mud Creek Morning, I grew up on the Pike-Floyd County line. You know what I'm talking about. You know where Mud Creek is.
I know where I've been up Mud Creek.
Me too. And so that song,
Sounds ominous.
when I was trying to figure out, like, what do people write songs about? What is this? What are we doing? And I got a piece of advice that was like, write about, if you just want to start writing, write about what you know, what's something you know a lot about. And I was like, unfortunately, Mud Creek. Not unfortunately. I love Mud Creek, but yeah, that's where that song came from.
Well, and just to give everybody a little bit of context, when I said a few minutes ago, I've been up Mud Creek, that's how you say it. Mud Creek is a holler. It's a creek, and it's called Mud Creek. We also have a Greasy Creek, and there's several, interesting named places in Pike and Floyd County.
Absolutely.
But Mud Creek is right there on the Pike-Floyd County line. I had a friend of mine who lived up Mud Creek when I was a kid, and so I'd go up to his house, and you'd go up Mud Creek. That's how you say it. And also a little bit more context, too. Gil Holland is the owner of Sonoblast Records, which is based here in Louisville. And he owns several businesses, and he's also kind of an entrepreneur in town. He owns a film production company, and he does a lot of real estate. He is one of the people responsible for kind of the gentrification, if you will, of a lot of downtown neighborhoods in Louisville that has kind of revitalized the downtown area. So Cait would have no reason to know him necessarily when she met him, but not returning his call for, a few days is in the Louisville area. People are like, you didn't email Gil when he said you should? Oh my goodness. Like he's a pretty big name.
That's how it went. It just completely, and in my head, like I was going to see a show, it was at the Monarch. I had already had like a White Claw at that point. And so I was like, I got his business card. I'll email him. It's whatever. And so I found out hearing this story from Gil's perspective is way funnier because to him, he like hands me his business card and is like, all right, I'm going to hear from her. And then nothing.
Yeah.
And he told me that, he stayed up and like found everything that he could that I had put out, which wasn't a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I had like
I'd done like Terra Firma with Michael Logsdon a couple months prior. I'd like posted some TikTok videos. And Gil somehow found an email that I posted that I forgot that I had even put on the internet at any point. I went and checked. I logged into that email for the first time in months, and in my spam folder, there it was him trying to reach out to me on like that Wednesday. And I spent a whole week just completely ghosted him.
Well,
without even realizing.
It actually probably, in a weird sort of way, worked out really well for you because Gil's not used to that. So he was probably, well, now I have to talk to this girl. Who does she think she is not emailing me back? Gil doesn't have an ego or an attitude like that. But at the same time, it's just really funny to hear that story because, yeah, Gil's a big deal. And I'll actually throw a little fuel on the fire, too, because I ran into Gil a couple weeks ago at the Monarch when he reminded me, or not didn't remind me, told me that you had an album out. I had completely forgotten he owned a record label. Like, Gil is someone that I probably should have reached out to long before recently to say, hey, these Sonoblast, artists you've got, we'd love to have them on the show. And I just completely forgot that he did that because he does so many different things. So him coming to the Monarch was kind of fortuitous in that. And obviously you're here kind of as a result of that. Now, back to the recording session. I understand like all this whirlwind stuff is happening. You're in this recording session, less than probably 2 weeks after even meeting Gil Holland. But there was a film crew that showed up. Did I read that right?
Yes. So a film crew... It was such a fun 2 weeks. It was a lot. I had done music since I was a kid, but like even playing shows was terrifying to me. And it still is even, almost 2 years later since I've started. And so, yeah, I'm filming so I'm recording this album and I get a text from Gil and when I went to go sign the contract initially, we ran into, it's with Paisley Mountain Productions. We ran into their director and they're filming this series. I don't know how much I'm allowed to talk about it. I feel like I can say, but it's a TV show about up and coming artists and musicians in Kentucky, like in the Louisville area. Nice. And so we ran into them just by chance. And I guess they took a shine to me. And so they reached out to Gil and they were like, hey, you said that she just signed with you while she's recording an album. Can we come do an episode on her? And so I found out that I signed a record deal that I'm recording and then also that I'm going to be in an episode of this TV show. That was within a couple days. I was at the studio when Gil was like, just a heads up, they're going to be stopping by while you're recording. And I didn't know. Mm-hmm. I was just like, okay, sure. Yeah, send them my way. And like 12 people show up with cameras and they're like setting up all this lighting and like backdrops and they're rearranging stuff and there's people running all over the place. And I'm like, what have I gotten myself into?
No pressure.
Yeah, my blood pressure was so high that whole day because they mocked me up and everything. And I was like, I'm going to say something so stupid and it's going to be just like somebody's just going to have that now. Cause but they were so sweet. They were the sweetest people in the world. I actually ended up becoming friends with them. So it was like a 10-hour day. I spent like 5 hours recording, having that mic on me and then them recording while I was doing everything. And then I was just hanging out, going to do stuff, getting to talk about. We went to the Monarch. I asked them, I was like, I think it would be really cool to get to showcase the Monarch because it's made me who I am. I think that the Monarch has been a very integral part of my journey as a songwriter, as a musician, as a person, honestly. Because, moving from Pikeville to Louisville, the big city, it's hard to find a community. It's a lot. In Pikeville, you grow up with everybody you go to school with the same people from when you're in kindergarten until you graduate, and then you move to a city like this and it's like, where do I even begin? But when the first time I went to the Monarch, it was an immediate feeling of like home.
Yeah.
I was really glad that I got to like involve them also in the process.
Yeah, it's definitely a community of like-minded people, mostly musicians, singers, songwriters, collaborating, helping each other out. And, Mark's done a great job of pulling that community together. And the fact that he, not only brings in and has folks like you locally who get to showcase their music, but also brings in some pretty big name folks. I mean, Frank will love to hear this. I think it's in April, Joby Riccio's coming to the Monarch. So we've got some good names coming through there. So good stuff.
Nice.
I always say that I'm spoiled being so close to something like that because what I love about the Monarch is you get to discover all kinds of local artists and like touring artists. But there's also, like bigger named artists that come in, and the Monarch is not that big. It's a very intimate, personal venue. So you get to have like a front row seat to some of like musicians that like you love or that you don't even know that you're going to love until you get to sit 5 feet from them and watch them play. And it's magic. It's just magical every time I go.
Love to hear that. And with all of the good stuff that's been coming in bunches, most people don't get to talk to someone like you who's right on the cusp of breaking out. So is that how you feel about your career right now? The album is a big break, and it seems like everything happened so quickly. So what do you think is coming in the next year or so for you?
I don't really know. I'm open to anything. I mean, at this point, like it's just, I'm just happy to be here. I mean, that sounds a little silly, but even if this is it, I'm so happy. This is not something that I ever, even in my wildest dreams, imagined that would happen, let alone this quickly. When I started doing open mics and playing shows, I was like, this is fun. This is something that I do for fun. Maybe a couple years from now, when I have been doing this for longer and I'm more experienced, or, I feel more comfortable with it, maybe I'll like start dreaming and like toying with the idea of like signing, like just, but then it just like out of nowhere happened. And I was like, I would be crazy if I didn't do this.
Yeah.
This album's out, and I'm hoping that it's just, this is only the beginning, but even if this is it, like, I'm just so happy and thankful. And like everybody at Sonoblast has been so kind to me, amazing. And it's cool to just be able to say that like I have something out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like, this is like, hey, I made this thing. I exist. This is out here in the world. This is mine. I'm sharing a part of myself. Like, it's awesome.
Well, I know the record company and the folks in Louisville who know music are really excited about the album, and they're excited about you. And just from my own personal experience and perspective, people who've only been seriously writing songs for a couple of years don't get record deals. So it takes a while to get to that point. So there's obviously some talent there that people are recognizing. And so that's a pretty good indicator that this is not going to be your last album and that more good things are going to come. I wouldn't be surprised if we see tour dates and more to come in bunches. We want to listen to some more of that good music, though, and your beautiful voice. So we're going to step out and take a break. So we're going to go listen to a song on the way out. We'll listen to a song on the way back in. When we come back, I want to dig into where all this music comes from besides Pike County. But let's go out with Same Old Roads. She's Cait Justice, and this is Roots Music Rambler.
Look me in the eyes and tell me I will be just fine while I'm bleeding out my Sunday best like Merlot stains on a satin dress. My mouth tastes just like iron, even more and more these days. And my thoughts, they are so bitter, but I chew them also. I walk the same old roads, though I know where they go. I'm just searching for that peace of mind I must have lost along the way. The ending is the same no matter where it all begins. So just hang me up on the drying line like I'm airing out my sins. It would be kind of funny if it wasn't so damn sad that the anchor that I'm feeling is the oldest friend I have. It holds me like a lover holds a sharp end of the knife, pressed against my throat until it sees the fading light.
Hey guys, have you heard of Goldbelly? It's this amazing site where they ship the most iconic, famous foods from restaurants across the country, anywhere, nationwide. I've never found a more perfect gift than food. They ship Chicago deep dish pizza, New York bagels, Maine lobster rolls, and even Ina Garten's famous cakes. So if you're looking for a gift for the food lover in your life, head to goldbelly.com and get 20% off your first order with promo code GIFT.
It drowns way to giving in. I try to think on better days, but I don't think there ever was. Just the times I love because I didn't know to feel ashamed. Somehow too much and not enough. Somehow too much but not enough. Love you as much as I can, darling, I promise I do. Living like this is killing me and it sure ain't fair to you.
Welcome back to Roots Music Rambler. That's more of a full band sound there from Cait Justice. The song is called Say You Love Me. It features Scott T. Smith, who is another great voice here in Louisville, who I've met at the Monarch a couple of times. Cait, talk a little bit about the music community here. You've touched on the Monarch and that it's been impactful. I'd love to know from an artist's perspective a little bit more about what is it about Louisville and or the Monarch community that makes it so special? What are you drawing from that helps you become a better artist?
I think that one of the best things about the community around here is just how loving everyone is. You know, putting yourself out there like that is terrifying. It is one of the scariest things somebody can do. But from the first time I showed up and did a show or like did an open mic, like, you know, just stepping out there, I was met with nothing but love and support. And that's the kind of thing that's life-changing. I think the Monarch especially, but even just the Louisville music scene in general has fostered such a sense of like community and support and love and gratitude, and everybody wants to build each other up, which I think is really rare nowadays. You know, I've been very lucky to have met the people that I have and to be, you know, call these people my friends now after, you know, people that I see at open mics and I'm like, oh, they're so cool. They would never talk to me. You know what I mean? Like I wish I could play like them. I wish I sounded like them. Like they're incredible songwriters. And then getting to play shows with them or getting to write with them and you know, sing and just jam and hang out. You know, in Pikeville, everybody plays, but I feel like it's just not the same. There's not as much of like an open mic scene or like a music scene, I would say, necessarily.
Hillbilly days, except for Hillbilly days.
Hillbilly days.
Hillbilly days, we all get drunk. Everybody plays everywhere. It's awesome.
That
Absolutely.
sounds like fun.
Yeah, you can't. I got to mention Hillbilly days. That's one of my favorite things too to talk about moving to Louisville is getting to talk about Pikeville culture with people. You know, I'm like,
That
Hillbilly
sounds like
days, and they're like,
fun.
what is that?
Yeah.
What does that even mean? What do you do at Hillbilly days?
Just squint. That's what it is. You're thinking exactly right. So it's fun.
I would say the name should give you a pretty good idea of what Hillbilly Days is all about. So speaking of Hillbilly Days, Pike County, Pikeville, everyone knows now that's where you're from, and there is outstanding music heritage there. And you've already talked about how you've been singing, you know, you started singing before you could even talk. So how exactly did that happen? How did music come to be for you? When did you first start singing, writing, playing, etc.?
So I started in church. My papa was a preacher. You know, I was going to church like the second that I was out of the hospital, I was in a pew. You know what I mean? I was there. The denomination that I was raised in doesn't have instruments. It's just vocals. And so it's like, we don't have like a church choir or anything. It's just everybody sings hymns. And so from when I was a kid, even before I said like my first word, really my first coherent word, you know, I was humming and like learning worship songs and doing that. And so I think that honestly reflects a lot. I feel like a lot of my music is kind of melody driven. And I think it may be because that's where my foundation started, you know, singing a cappella in a group, you know, hymns and stories and things like that. And I was lucky enough when I was in 6th grade, you know, I started band. That was the first opportunity I really had. I played the flute. I was horrible at it. And so in the 7th grade, I was like, I'm going to try choir out and see how that goes. That was it. I started in 7th grade. I stayed in choir all the way through college until COVID hit. You know, I did, and every type of choir you could think of, mostly concert choir, you know, like SATB, but I did chamber choir, show choir, everything like that. And I also did theater in high school. I'm a huge fan of musical theater, one of my favorite things. And so I did a lot of shows. I started playing guitar, I think I was around 13 or 14. My dad played, but he didn't play very often. And I believe the first one that he gave me was an old one that he had. It's an old, you can't see it over here, but it's this Jasmine guitar. And that thing was, can I swear?
Yeah.
Of course.
Oh, it was beat all the hell. It was beat all the hell. That it was a
Wait,
it was
that's
a
a
very
swear?
That's not really a swear
That's
on
not
our
a
show, but that's
swear.
okay. We get it.
Yeah, but she was in rough shape, and my dad restrung it for me and was like, "Here," and he taught me a couple chords, but basically it was like, "You're on your own." Thanks, Dad, because he knew what would happen. Probably he was like, "She's going to get addicted to it,
Yeah.
and then it's going to be all my fault." So I can't tell her nothing.
There you go.
He taught me a couple chords. I started playing. I just watched a lot of YouTube videos, things like that. I started playing Taylor Swift songs. I didn't take guitar seriously either until I went to college, but I stayed with choir all throughout from 7th grade up until I went to college, and then COVID hit and everything was remote. You can't really do choir online, unfortunately, but in college, I started taking guitar more seriously, and that's when I wrote Love Song, it was based on a play that I watched for one of my college. It was like Intro to Theater, and I had never been I have been moved by media before that. I love theater. I love musical theater. I did Shakespeare. Like I actively enjoyed a lot of types of media, but that was the first play that I had ever watched where I had been so moved that I was moved to create. If that makes sense. I had it like the feeling that it gave me. I was like, I have to do something with this. Like this is like, I watched it 3 times. It was like an hour and a half long play. I watched it 3 times, crying my eyes out.
What play was it?
It's called Love Song. I can't remember, the playwright at the moment, but it's about this old couple at the end of their life, and they had been married since they were young. And it's basically their journey. It's like flashbacks to like moments earlier in the relationship. And I don't want to spoil it. Or maybe I should spoil it. The song won't make sense if I don't. Ultimately, the wife, she's diagnosed with some kind of terminal illness. I'm not sure what. And she kind of decides, I've spent my whole life, in control at the helm. Why am I going to let death take it from me? And so she makes her own decision. She kind of tells her husband, like, listen, I've been saving, my medicine. Like, this is what I'm going to do. And she's basically just like matter-of-factly being like, this is the plan. This is what it is. The chorus in Love Song is, oh, my honey, don't you cry for me. We both know this was how things were meant to go. One of their big things was travel. And so there's so many things I never got to see. Do you promise you'll see them for me?
Oh,
and
wow.
It was just such a moving play. And yeah, I cried so much. And so I was like, I just sat down and wrote that song on my ukulele.
Very nice.
And I was 18, 19 at the time.
Wow. That's good stuff.
It kind of sounds like a musical version of the movie Up. Like the storyline.
Oh, that movie destroyed me. Yeah.
Me too. Still does. I cry every time I watch it.
Oh, man.
But I love it.
So I want to go back a little. I know your dad gave you the guitar, so that's an obvious one. And you took us through the journey, but I'm curious who along the way, when you look back now, do you say, oh, this person helped inspire me to do this, or this person taught me that? Because I know you were in choir, you were in the band originally. I think you were a Pike Central Hawk, if I'm not mistaken.
Indeed. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks. There you go. But who along the way, whether it's teachers or other relatives or other musicians, pushed you along to get to the point to where you are now?
I think that especially in high school and then even through a little bit of college, my high school choir director, Jason Johnson, and then the band director, Matt Moon, I had never felt seen until I started choir in high school. I was in the jazz band as well. I was in the marching band. I did color guard. I sang in the jazz band. That's why I think it's so important to have music for, like in middle school and high school. I think it's such an important program. And I think what they're doing at Pike Central is incredible because I had felt, 14-year-old doesn't feel lost and confused and misunderstood. And just, Mr. Moon and Mr. Johnson just with open arms welcomed me and really helped like foster what I had. They were endlessly encouraging, put up with me as a 14-year-old, which like nobody likes their 14-year-old self, you know what I mean? But they were so kind and so good to me. And they really instilled like the importance of keeping music in my life. I remember when I graduated, one of the last conversations I had with Mr. Johnson was just him telling me, please keep doing this in some capacity, just because it's like important to have like for yourself, but also put it out in the world. I've carried that with me. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing now. If I wouldn't have had their encouragement and their support and the kind words that they gave me through like the 4 years I was there, I don't know where I would be. I don't know what I'd be doing. I wouldn't be nearly as happy having music. I wouldn't have music in my life.
That's really sweet. That is, truly. So Dwight Yoakam and Patti Loveless, couple notable artists from the same area. And of course, Jason never lets us forget that y'all grew up close to Tyler Childers, Chris Stapleton, Sturgill Simpson, blah, blah, blah. Okay. But who did you listen to growing up? And what are your external influences for your music?
All right, so I have a confession to make. I did not like country music until I was in college.
There's nothing wrong with that at all.
I know. I grew up, so like my family and, especially my grandparents loved bluegrass and country and like old school country. And so I listened to it a lot growing up, and I'm definitely inspired by it now. Looking back on it now, I've realized how much it shaped me, even if I was like, I don't listen to country music. Who likes country music? I think I also realized, I hope I'm not going to offend anybody, I don't like pop country. I don't like current,
No
you know what I
offense
mean? But
taken.
old school country, I've always loved. It was just hard to make that distinction because I thought that all country was that country,
Yeah.
like what country you hear now. And so I listened to a lot of musical theater, and then I listened to a lot of pop, indie music. Indie was a big thing for me growing up. But when I started songwriting, it was actually Tyler Childers was one of my biggest influences, just because I don't remember how old I was. I think it would have been around 2019 or 2020. I heard the album that he had just released. I think it was Country Squire around that time. And I'd moved to Louisville, or I'd gone to college, and then I ended up moving to Louisville. And I just remember thinking, this sounds like home. Why does this sound so much like home? And like his accent and like the way that he enunciates words, I was like, it sounds like home. I miss home.
Sounds like
This
all
is
my
crazy.
cousins.
Yeah, I was like, it's just, and it just made me realize like how, I'd always known how powerful music was, but like to hear somebody that has achieved so much and done so much sound like me and sound like people that I love, sound like my family, was just life-changing. And so I've listened to everything that he ever put out. And then I really started exploring like the Americana country genre. Big fan of Sturgill Simpson, big fan of Chris Stapleton. Obviously, you got hometown boys, from around the area. But I went and saw Sturgill Simpson actually in concert a couple months ago. Dude, I don't know if you all have been to see him.
Oh,
I
yeah.
went to
I have not.
I think it was Bridgestone Arena down in Nashville. 3 straight hours of just like, I had to pick my face up off the floor after I left. It was amazing.
Yeah, it's an experience for sure. I was at the Rep Arena show in September, and it was just like, holy crap. And there's no frills. If you're wondering what a Sturgill Simpson show is like, no opener, at least there wasn't the night I went. He and the band walk out there and they start playing. They blow the roof off the joint for 3.5 hours, and they walk off the stage, and you're sitting there going, what just happened? Like, it's amazing.
Yeah, showtime said 8.
Yeah.
The lights hadn't even gone down yet. People were not in their seats yet. And they walked up, 8 o'clock on the dot, started.
Yep.
No words. Just started playing. And then I think it like halfway through, Sturgill was like, I should probably speak. and he was like, hi, my name's Sturgill, but you probably already know that because you're here. And then right back into it.
Yeah.
And that was like the only words that he really spoke the whole night.
Yeah. The night that I saw him was the night that there was the remnants of a hurricane coming through, and we were going to have high winds and dangerous roads and all that kind of stuff. And he walked out, and right before the band started playing, he said, Kentucky don't give a fuck about no hurricane. And then they just started playing. So he's great. He's fantastic.
Wow.
Oh, another thing that I love about the Louisville music community is that obviously with all the historic flooding going on right now in Eastern Kentucky, back home, and, in the Carolinas and just in Appalachia in general, how many flood relief drives there have been and shows, and like how everybody just rallies together hard. And it's just one of my favorite things in the world to see how everybody looks out for each other in the music community.
Yeah.
I share stuff all the time on my Facebook, and people will donate. People will ask me about it. People will ask, what do people need back in Pikeville, back at home? And it's so heartwarming.
It is. It is. So this Chicago girl approves of your music choices. I'll just say that. And I have not yet seen Sturgill live. I had tickets to see him and Tyler Childers on the Good Looking tour. Was that what it was called?
Was that in 2020?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you know what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. That was the worst thing. and I know this sounds really trivial because so many people had greater issues and problems because of the pandemic, but that was the worst thing that happened to me was that show not happening. I mean, I've seen Tyler a number of times, and I mean, I'll see him again, but oh God, I need to see Sturgill.
He's great.
So anyway, yeah,
Amazing.
I know everyone I know who has seen him on this last tour or whatever, if he's still on the tour, and even before said that he's just incredible. Now back to you, Cait. So you've said that you write about what you know, okay, which is home. So we assume you continue to write when you're no longer at home. So how do you think your writing is evolving as you continue your journey? And is there anything different about the songs you're composing now versus that first set that you wound up recording?
So the ones that I'm writing now are, I think, a bit more personal. They're all personal, but I started songwriting. That first one that I wrote was like the first time I had ever felt an emotion so big I couldn't just keep it in my body, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so every song that I wrote after that kind of stemmed from that same feeling. The songs have always been something very deeply personal to me. There's always a story behind them about something that's happened. It may not be to me necessarily, but it's still, there's a story behind all of them. Even the fun ones like Boy in a Band, I mean, I just wanted to write something fun. But there was a reason I wanted to write something fun. Unfortunately, pain is a great motivator for songwriting, and it's a great outlet to deal with things that are just too hard to deal with by yourself. And some of the songs, a couple that are on the album, but a couple of them that are not, I've written about very deeply personal, like traumatic things that have happened. And so getting to get up on a stage and play that for people is, it's part of why it's so terrifying, but it's also like the most connected that you could ever possibly be, I think, to walk up and basically just like spill your guts on the pavement in front of people and be like, here's the worst thing that's ever happened to me. I can't talk to a therapist about it, but I'll sing about it to you all.
Yeah.
That's what songwriting is, especially some of the ones that I'm writing now. I've just realized it's such a good constructive way of dealing with that stuff. And everybody's got shit going on.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I'm just lucky that I've managed to find such a healthy outlet for it. Healthy to an extent. I mean, being a musician is,
relatively speaking, healthy.
Yeah.
Comes with its warning labels.
Well, I know we can't wait for album number 2 already.
And thank you all so much for listening. I appreciate
it.
Yeah,
the album is called Angel Teeth, and it is fantastic. I've listened to it 5 or 6 times already.
Thank you.
Really, really, really good stuff. And I hope that, there's a big tour coming up and you're going to be bouncing all over the damn country, sharing your music with everybody else.
Stay tuned. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. That's good stuff. Where can people find you and the old music on the old interwebs?
You can find me at Cait Justice on Instagram, Facebook. It's CAIT Justice. Spelled justice, spelled the normal way.
Yeah.
Not with a US like some of them do in Pikeville.
No.
JUSTIC. And then I'm also on Spotify, Apple Music, all the other places you get your music and things.
We are definitely going to post links to all of those places as well as to the album on Spotify. And it's from our pals at Sonoblast Records, obviously. You can dial Cait up on all those places. We'll make sure there's links in the show notes at rootsmusicrambler.com. Cait, thank you so much for hanging out, dear. We didn't really geek out about Pikeville and Pike County, even though we're both from there. But I'll save that for the offline conversations. I do need to clarify this and say this for the folks back home. Cait and I did go through the exercise of who's your kin, right? Because I couldn't come.
As is tradition.
I couldn't.
As is tradition.
Well, not only did we need to know that, but I couldn't interview on a podcast knowing folks from back home were going to listen and not say hi to your kin that I know. Fortunately for me, I don't think I know very many of your kin. So hi, all of Cait's relatives. I don't think we know each other. I'm too old.
Well, Lord, listen, my family's so big, it's hard telling.
I'm sure I'm going to get an email from somebody. You son bitch, you didn't mention me on that interview show there with old Cait. By God, I'm going to come down there and whoop your ass. So I'll get that, I'm sure. But anyway, thank you so much for hanging out and doing Pikeville justice with some great music.
Thank you all for having me.
Absolutely loved having you. We're going to hopefully see you playing on the Grand Ole Opry stage soon.
Gosh, I hope so. That'd be awesome. Lord, if I'd have a heart attack.
Oh, we'll make sure you're there we'll prop you up. Anyway, let's go to break with one of my favorites from the new album. It is the title track. It's called Angel Teeth. She's Cait Justice. Stick around for Pickin' the Grinnin. This is Roots Music Rambler.
I've seen this part before and I remember how it ends. Wild lies and alibis, that's just the way it is. Well, the fastest way to a man's heart is to stab him in the ribs. Trailer park, queen sat on her double wide throne. Yeah, God may be forgiven, but I'll make sure you atone. You won't hear the trumpets playing when I come back into town, and you will know my name when I burn your city down. Yeah, I looked death in his face, and there's just one thing that I found. The river where I was born will not be the one in which I drown.
TaxAct knows small business owners can sometimes use a little help with their taxes. That's why TaxAct has Expert Assist, a team of live tax experts ready to answer any questions you may have. Think of them as your own personal sidekick. Not like one of those funny talking animal sidekicks, more like the super smart nerding out on tax code and business casual attire sidekick, but just as helpful and lovable. TaxAct. Let's get them over with.
Welcome back to Roots Music Rambler. How about my new homegirl, Cait Justice? Isn't that great? I love celebrating my Pike Vegians.
I'm happy to take part in it. I mean, and she is delightful.
Yeah.
She's adorable, and her stories and her delivery are just awesome.
Yeah. That was fun, and I can't wait to see how her career goes, because she's very talented. Her songs are really good. 2 years in, she's got a record deal, so I mean, there's a lot of talent there, so I'm excited for her, and it's going to be fun to see her grow and blossom into a big-time touring artist, I hope. So good stuff. Glad to have her on the show for sure. All right, it's time for the Pickin' the Grinnin' segment. This is the part of the program where Frank and I pick the artists who are making us grin. It's our way of recommending new artists, new songs, new albums. Might even be old artists, old songs, old albums. Who knows? Something that made us grin this week so that we remind you to, hey, go check this out, because it took us down memory lane or whatever. Frank, what you got for us on your Pickin' the Grinnin'?
So initially I had a different artist picked out for my Pickin' the Grinnin' today, but due to the conversation we had in the open, I think I do have to go with Mumford and Sons as my Pickin' the Grinnin'. You know, I never thought about him before as my choice, and probably just because they haven't put out new music in a while and they weren't at the forefront, right? But they do have a new album coming up soon. I don't know exactly when.
The date on that is March 28th. So by the time this episode drops, it will be out. So it's coming soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Perfect. And I know that they're going to be touring too. I'm already signed up for all the alerts and passwords and whatever. The time in my life when I discovered them, I guess it's what I needed. I listened to him nonstop. It got to the point where my office mates, they were like, all right, look, you got to listen to something else because you're making me sick of them. Okay. Yeah. I don't know. The sound is great. And, you know, that whole Gentleman of the Road vibe that they had going on, I was really digging that. The songwriting is very deep. Marcus, since gaining notoriety, you know, has come out and admitted that he had a troubled past. I won't go into too much detail. And that's what he drew from with his songwriting. It just spoke to me and I loved listening to it. And I'm excited for the new album, knowing that it's supposed to be more like their earlier, like their Say No More and Babbled, you know, those albums.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's great.
So that's it.
Rushmere, I think, is the name of the new album
yes.
forthcoming. It should be out by the time you hear this. It will be out. We're recording this a couple of weeks before it comes out. The way we do this, it's a couple of weeks after we record that we actually publish. So it'll be out by then. And I actually saw the Gentleman on the Road tour in Troy, Ohio, with my buddy Joe, and saw Mumford and Sons. They also had Old Crow Medicine Show. Justin Townes Earl, I was fortunate enough to see him before he unfortunately passed away. So I got to see them when they were kind of hitting it big, and they're really good live. They were really fascinating, good stuff. So Mumford & Sons. That's a good one. All right. So my pick in the Grinnin, interestingly enough, is a young lady by the name of ZZ Ward. You may have heard of her. She's gotten some notoriety. She's an LA-based singer-songwriter, and she's done a lot of collaborations that have gotten some notoriety. In fact, her song, I believe it's called Ride, which features Gary Clark Jr., was the end title song on Pixar's Cars 3. She's had a song like on a movie soundtrack that's gotten her a lot of notoriety. Now, she's got a new album coming out. By the time you hear this, it will already be out. But in this new album, and her music, the way I would describe her older music is much more bluesy rock, much more in the line of it's going to be a trailer on a Pixar movie, real fast pace, almost kind of pop, country, blues, rock mixture. Good music, good songs, get up and dance to them, that kind of stuff. But this new album, she kind of turns a little harder into the blues. So she's got a beautiful voice. She's got a great band behind her. And I've heard about half of the new album. The full thing's not out yet, but the first 5 or 6 cuts are out. And I was kind of binging on it today. And I really, really like what I'm hearing. Just so happens that she's playing the Mercury Ballroom here in Louisville on March 23rd. So that'll probably be in the past when this episode of Roots Music Rambler comes out. I happen to be filling in for Roots and Boots that day for Michael Young, and ZZ Ward is going to come by the studio, and I'm going to interview her on the air on Roots and Boots. Goodness. So I'm binging on her music. I'm really loving the new album, and I wanted to share that with everybody because I think she's worth, if you're into the blues and, good old bluesy rock music, she's great. You'll really, really like her stuff. So ZZ Ward, and we'll make sure there's links to her and Mumford & Sons and all sorts of other stuff in the old show notes.
Awesome.
There you go. All right. I think we've talked too much and too long, so we probably ought to get the hell out of here. Roots Music Rambler is a production of Falls and Partners, copyright 2025, editing and technical production by Resonate Recordings. Our theme music is Sheepskin and Beeswax by Genta Corum. Join us online at rootsmusicrambler.com and make sure you mash that subscribe or follow button so you remember to join us for the next Hoe-Down and Throwdown. She's Frank.
He's Falls.
And whatever you do, kids, ramble on.